Hello, hello, I'm back. So, do you remember when I talked to you about how eclectic I am as a painter? We have painted together lots of things now. I put out 9 videos so far, I think it is. And we did that wonderful lighthouse, which was like a true watercolor type thing. Then we did the sailboat in the sunset, different style. And today is totally a different style because the holidays are here and I just want to do something fun and frivolous, and I'm sure that you would like to do something fun and frivolous as well. So we're painting today this cute little snowman, and it's using negative space. Like if you notice, there is really no head. All you see is a cap, the facial features, and a little bow tie, or maybe that's probably a scarf actually. And that's what we're painting. Totally fun, totally silly, and totally easy. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, here we go. We've got our cute little Santa here, and my cute little snowman here. We're going to put him on a card. We talked last painting time about cards and how I think it's important to give your paintings away, and not just hoard them all, unless they really give you great comfort. But we're going to go ahead and put this on a card, a Strathmore water card, 5x7. And we're going to paint on the outside where the little nub of a line fold is. If you turn it over, this is an indent here. That's the inside of your card. And here is the bumpy edge. This is the outside of your card. So I'm going to just leave it flattened out. And we're going to go ahead and paint. Now, this painting is simple in the fact that there's very little to do. And you're looking at a painting that's done with negative space. So if you look really closely at this snowman, you do not see his head. In your mind, you do. In your mind, you see his round little head. But really, there's no head there. We're not painting a head. We're painting a cap and some facial features and a little bit of a scarf down here. So, to start with, we're doing my messy colors as usual. We've got some reddish pink in here. I've got a little dab of orange over here. And that's all we're using for that little cup. Then we have some blue and some green here. So, whatever colors you have in your palette that are red, orange, green, and blue, and then, of course, black for the eyes and the mouth. Whatever you've got in your palette that approximates that color, feel free to use it. You don't have to have special paints to do this. So we're going to start in a really simple way. I'm going to use my black velvet brushes. Let me get my water over here. Okay, I'm going to pick up some paint. We're going to do the red first. It's just, you could do any part of this painting first. It doesn't make any difference if you start with the nose or you start with the hat. It doesn't matter where you start. I'm just starting up at the top. Now you notice, if you look at the painting, it really is kind of washy looking. It isn't a defined line you're going to paint inside. It kind of lets go and wanders off into the hinterland over there on the left. And I like that. I want this to look kind of fantasy-like. So I'm going to start by painting. Oh, I said I had the wrong color. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened, but bravo to Kleenex, right? And I'll just wet it a slight bit and get even more of that off. Yeah, see, look, it's like it disappeared. That's what I love about watercolor. You can do so many cool things. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up some red, paint the hat, and I'm painting it inside the, well, why? Oh, I see why, okay. I'm going to go ahead and paint this. This is kind of a brownish color. There's more of a red. It won't matter which color you use. I'm just going inside those lines that I drew. And again, I made darker lines on my card than I normally would, just so it'll show up on the camera. So I've got the hat started, just one watery layer of paint. Now we've got red here in the hat too, so another layer of watery paint down here. I mean, look how fast. If you had a friend you wanted to give a card to, I am talking fast. You can make this card super easily and super fast. Okay, there's my red. Now, I like, again, to have it look more like a fantasy thing. So if you take a good look at the card, you can see the colors kind of droop over. They're not perfectly square. So I'm going to add a little water to my paintbrush, and I'm going to move those. I'm going to move some of that over into the white part. So it's not perfect. I don't want it to look perfect. So just move it over to the water. And while my paintbrush is wet, let's do some fantasy stuff here. Watch this. This is like, be brave, okay? If you're one of those draw inside the line people, just be brave. All I did was add some more water to my brush so that it was really loose and wet and kind of tea quality, not real dark. Okay, now the hat looks kind of squishy and the color's moving around. That's what you want. And you can dab more color on if you want. You can make it as fantasy-like as you would like. It does not have to be perfect, and you really can't do this wrong. So feel free to mess with that. Now, the other thing I want to have you notice about the hat is that we have shadows. If you look at all of the stuff on here has shadows. Underneath this hat, if you look closely, there's a little bit of dark, almost like black. It's actually Payne's gray, and it's really watered down, so it comes out looking gray and not just black. But I've also got some gray in here, 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 and under the hat. That gives it a look of reality. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to do it while it's wet because I kind of like to have that gray shadowy stuff mix in with the wet paint. Now I've been talking for a couple of minutes, well, for a minute or so. So the paint's getting dry as we talk, and that's fine, no problem there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in what's called Payne's Gray. It's actually will come out black. It looks black right out of the tube. But if I pick up just a little bit of it, and I put it on the side to check the color, I can see that if I put just the right amount of water in it, I can get a nice gray. So I'm using this brush because it's a very pointy brush. Get the most pointy brush you've got to do this. Tiny and pointy. And I'm also going to give a shout out right now for liner brushes. We talked about liner brushes in the first painting, one of the first episodes I did where it said all about brushes. Well, these are liner brushes, and if you can see, they have very few hairs on them. They're little tiny things. You could buy those, and these are inexpensive. You can buy a set of 4 liner brushes, I think for like $8 or something on Amazon. So if you don't have a brush that goes to a beautiful point like the black velvets do, get something that does go to a point and get some liner brushes to do this. I actually, when I first started out, took one of my cheap brushes and I actually took some manicure scissors and I cut it to a point. You know, I'm just not above doing anything to get the look I want to get. So I'm going to add some shadow to my hat. And the way I'm going to do that is barely touch the bottom of the hat. Let me see if I can get this way closer. Ah, here we are. Take a look at this. Put this under. Here's my hat, super duper close up. All I'm doing is taking my little tiny point of gray and I'm just dabbing it and not even drawing a line or covering all of it. I'm just dabbing a little bit of gray here and there. And then I'm going to rinse my brush off and my brush is damp and clean. I'm going to touch it to that gray and let it move. See how it's moving now? Now it's looking more and more like a shadow and not just a line. So we dabbed the really dark gray around the bottom of the hat, and then we went ahead and dabbed it with a clean, damp brush to make it look like it's a shadow and not just a line. I'm taking some more Payne's Gray. I'm doing the same thing under here. Just wiggling it. Wiggling it. I don't care about that big blob. I like it there. If you're making fantasy type stuff, got to get more paint, sorry. Then you don't want it to look perfect. You know, you really don't want it to look perfect. You want it to look in the fantasy land. This is not a real snowman after all, is it? So now, I kind of like it the way it is. If I want to get some super, super black on it, I could go ahead and go back in and add some darker areas to it. But this is going to make it look like you've got a shadow under the hat. Let's go back and look at that hat. Let's go back to here again. And let's just go ahead and dab a little bit more because you really want it to look like it's got a shadow underneath it. See how that works? Okay, now, hang on because I've decided to add some more to that. Some more really dark. I like it to be really dark and then light. I don't like it to be the same everywhere. Now I'm going to rinse my brush off. I'm going to pick up some more of the red because I want to pull this together across the top. I want to make sure that this looks like it goes all the way across. So I'm just dabbing a little bit more red there, and I'm going to hook it together down here as well. Awesome. And some more gray in between the red in the cap. All right? So it's not looking like a perfect cap. That's the last thing we want. Now the next thing we're going to do is the eyes. And I'm going to make a suggestion here. If you don't have a super great paintbrush that goes to a point, and I would, by the way, I would practice on some other paper. Let me grab a piece of paper out here to practice on. You need to make sure that what you're going to do is going to look good. So go ahead and take the skinniest, pointiest brush you have and just see if you can make some nice, thin, pointy lines. And if you don't like the way that comes out, then my suggestion would be, if you don't have the right kind of brush, I would suggest you go ahead and use a permanent pen to do both the eyes and the mouth, because you really want these thin. They'll look really funky if you don't make them thin. So hang on one second. I'm gonna kick that back a little bit with my handy dandy Kleenex. So you could use a permanent marking pen too. Just make sure it's permanent ink. Get that flattened down. Make sure it's permanent ink so it's not going to give you any grief. The thing I like about this one painting for using a permanent ink pen is that there are no colors near the black. You're not going to be painting right around it with watercolor paint. It's just off by itself on a white card. So you're not going to have to worry about this actually smudging and running. So I almost could say you can pick any nice fine tip black ink pen that isn't waterproof. On this one painting, I'm going to say that, just because you're not putting any paint near what you're doing with the pen. So let's go ahead and do our eyes. And I'm going to go ahead and use paint, because I prefer paint. Back to our wonderful Payne's Gray, or if you have a different palette, you would just use black. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to make the lines that's coming down here on the eyes, and then round, and I'm going to fill in the eyeball. Now, when you fill in the eyeball, let me see if I can get this to a better. Yeah, we'll do that. When you fill in the eyeball, you'll notice there's a circle inside the eyeball. That's supposed to stay white. See it? That's what gives him a real eyeball look. So you don't want to paint inside that white circle. You want to leave that white. Or if you're using the black pen, just go ahead and circle around it with your pen until it's all filled in except for that white circle. You're going to leave that white circle alone. And then the eyebrow. All right, one eyeball done. Next eyeball. I'm putting in the line at the bottom of the eye to give it a shape. Then I'm going around the outside with either my pen or my paint, and then fill it in and leave that inner circle white. And an eyebrow. So for those of you who are purists, this is not going to be your idea of a fun painting. But for those of you who like to try all kinds of crazy things, this would be a fun thing to paint because it's just a fun guy. Going to use the same idea down here Now this is probably, in reality, a little twig, right, that they've put in here. So it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It could look like a twig. The one over here, I made super straight. Thin, straight line. I'm not straight line, but a thin curved line. And on this one, I'm making it more rough looking, like it could be a twig. Now the next thing you want to do, if you notice this one, underneath that smiley face is a little tiny bit of gray shadow. And all I'm doing here is taking my I'm going to clean my brush off, clean and damp, and just touch it to the bottom of the twig, and that'll give it a little bit of shadow. Don't do too much. This will look really crazy if you do it too much. Okay? You can leave it without a shadow there, and that would be fine too. Okay, moving on. All we've got is the nose and the scarf. So the scarf is blue and green, kind of a mixture. Kind of looks like, if you've been painting with me, it looks like wet on wet, doesn't it? That's exactly what it is. Well, you can start with green or you can start with blue. It doesn't matter because you're going to kind of mix them together. I'm going to start with the green, just for the heck of it, and I'm just going to fill in these parts of the scarf. Not even the whole box. I'm not making sure it's perfectly filled. I'm just kind of slathering it around. And right here, I actually got some down below, and I don't care because it's supposed to be a whimsical thing. So now, go into the blue. Let's see if we can do some wet on wet stuff where you paint blue on top of the green. Ooh, I like that. This is like a turquoise, kind of a teal-colored green, or teal-colored blue. And I like the way that mixes in there. Rinsing my brush off and make sure that it's clean and damp, and you can just smear it around. And now it's going to look much more whimsical and unrealistic, because obviously, duh, this is an unrealistic painting. Okay, so now notice this scarf looks very different from that scarf. They're just two different looks. As I've said so many times before, your paintings will not look alike. They will all look different. Every single time you paint it, it's going to be a little different. I kind of like the green, so I'm going back in for some more green. Ooh, I like that. You know, I like the green there, and I like the fact that it's kind of wiggly wobbly and not exactly where it should be. Okay, so his scarf is pretty much done. Let's go ahead and put in fact, I see one thing I'm going to change. I don't like the fact that these two boxes here totally mush together. So clean, damp brush, I'm going to pull some paint out of that. Wipe it off, clean and damp, and wipe it out. This is where my Kleenex comes in handy. I'm going to dab my clean brush on my Kleenex and wipe some paint away. And paint it away and wipe. And pull it away and wipe. And that's going to make a better separation between these two boxes. There we go. I like that. Yeah, I kind of like it dark here and there. It kind of gives it an interesting look, doesn't it? So we need to have a little bit of nose, and we're done. So I'm going to use orange for my nose. Notice there's a little round circle on the nose. You don't want to cover that up. That's the glint. And we're going to actually use, on the nose, we're going to use different shades of orange because we want it to look round. So as you're probably figuring out now, the lighter the color, the closer it looks to you. The darker the color or shade, the further away it looks. So that's why we use dark shadowing color here with a nice highlight here, and the nose now looks round. Where before it would look like a totally flat piece of paint. So the way you achieve that is by using different colors of orange and a little bit of that Payne's gray. We're going to start by simply filling in the nose. Don't fill in that little round circle. Leave that little guy there. You know what? We're almost done with this painting. Seriously. Be one of the easiest paintings you've ever made. And you might want to make several of them for friends. What I do on my cards is I go ahead and scan them in my computer. And I have a little old Photoshop thing that I use. And I print cards out on my computer. And that way I don't have to paint every single card. All right. I kind of like that nose. It's looking pretty good. Now, to make it so it's really looking more round, I'm going to clean my brush, damp, clean brush, and I'm going to pull away some of the paint around that circle. I want it to be lighter. There we go. I want it to be lighter here, so I'm pulling some of that away. And I want it to be darker away, so you're pretending like your sun is coming in from your left. So there's the highlight, and the shadow is going to be on this side. So for the shadow, while it's still wet, I'm going to get some of my Payne's Gray, which is nice and wet. So it's just going to come out looking really like a light gray. By the way, if you're not sure it's really a light gray, you aren't sure you have the right color, go ahead and test it and see if it's what you want before you put it on your painting. But while that orange is wet, I'm going to turn this card around, and I'm going to put some Payne's Gray on top of the orange, down in this edge down here. And it'll kind of blend in. If it doesn't blend in really well and you end up with kind of an edge between the two colors, what's the solution? You clean, damp brush, dampen it off so it's not wet, it's just damp, and simply dab between the orange and the Payne's Gray. Just dab, tap, 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 and that's going to blend those colors together way better. I'm going to put a little bit more Payne's Gray in there because I would like it to be a little darker down here. So what you're doing now is you're actually layering paint colors, right? You have an orange, and now you're layering a Payne's Gray on top of that orange. Some people call it glazing. I don't consider that a glaze. I've done glazing, and that's actually a different, in my opinion, is a different look. This is just layering watercolor, which is what watercolor does so beautifully. Now I have a little blob of paint that happened on this side of his nose. I can take a clean damp brush and wipe it away if I want. So when I say a clean damp brush, I want to make sure you understand. You take the water off, take the paint off of your brush, swish it around in the clean water, and then wipe it before you paint. Otherwise you're adding more water to your painting. Sometimes you want to do that, but right now we want a clean damp brush. So you have to kind of take some of the water off of the brush before you go back to the painting. Now this painting's done. I mean, how cool is that? This is the simple, simple, simple card to do. People would love to have a card like this. Be sure that when you paint your card that you sign it. In this case, I signed it sideways right along here. I don't like my signature to be bold. I like to have it hidden away, kind of tucked away, so that it's not taken away from the picture that I just painted. So here you go. Now you could try a variety of colors in the cap. The nose could be red instead of orange. I like the orange, quite frankly. You can make any color scarf you want. But this is our Snowman #1. And we actually have a Snowman #2 coming up in our next video. All right, let me just... Okay, so that was an easy one, wasn't it? I mean, it could have gone a lot faster if I hadn't been talking the whole time and teaching. I think it actually did seriously take me about 12 minutes to paint this. And that was my first time painting this little guy. So once you paint a couple of them, they go super fast. Kind of a fun thing to do when you're hanging out watching TV at night, or when you just need to have a little time for yourself to do something fun and creative. This is a great thing to do. So during the holiday season, I don't know about where you are, let's see when you're watching this video, but we're nearing the end of the first week of December at the time that I'm making this video. And It's getting hectic already. I'm thinking about Christmas presents. I already have a few, but not all of them. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to decorate or not, because decorating is just, to me, a big drag. I'm not very Christmassy when it comes to decorating. I probably will, but it just gets to be pressure for me. Plus all the activities, friends have parties and church events, and it just gets to be a lot going on. So if you just want to take a break, take your paints out, go away in a room and close the door, and paint a cute snowman. And I'll see you next time for another snowman. In the meantime, be kind to yourself, because you're doing the best you can for who you are today. See you next time. Bye.